Will anyone be able to stop the star-studded Team Canada in the much-anticipated Four Nations Faceoff that kicks off tonight? Have we been a little harsh on Avalanche General Manager Chris MacFarland? And can we already declare a winner in the Mikko Rantanen trade? All things to come on today's Rundown. The Four Nations Face-Off in the NHL, the latest iteration of a replacement for the All-Star Game, which I think we can all agree, All-Star Games in professional sports, maybe outside of Major League Baseball, could all use a little bit of tweaking. But this one feels like it's something that could really stick. There's a lot of hype, a lot of anticipation. It pulls on those Olympic heartstrings because you have the collection of European and American players who are playing for international and country pride, as opposed to just playing for cash or playing for recognition and what have you. So it kicks off tonight, and we're going to see some familiar faces as Sidney Crosby, Nathan MacKinnon, and Cale Makar, Devon Taves, and this star-studded Team Canada face off in the first game of the Four Nation Face-Off. They're going to take on Sweden, and then tomorrow we'll get to see Team USA take on Finland and our old friend Mikko Rantanen. So my question right off the bat is, how the heck is anyone going to stop a power forward lineup like Team Canada? We won't even get into their power play one, which is insane when you look at the names that they're able to assemble on a single line. But we're going to get a good look because by all intents and purposes, by my watch, it's going to be Team Canada and Team USA. So I'll be curious to see how it shakes out. I think that the forwards and the D pairings as it relates to Team Canada and Team USA, pretty evenly matched, both very strong. But if you're the Team USA and you've got Connor Hellebuck in goal and you're going up against the likes of a Jordan Binnington for Team Canada, I think that gives Team USA an early edge. Team Canada is a huge favorite thus far. I think they're minus 230 on the money line to beat Sweden. But let's not forget Sweden in the past in the Olympics and when they've played for national competitions and things like that, even at the junior level, they're pretty plucky and pretty scrappy. So they might have some weaknesses on the blue line, but I wouldn't count them entirely out, despite the fact that it looks like things are not stacked in their favor. As it relates to the Colorado Avalanche, I think we may already be able to declare a winner in the Mikko Rantanen trade, which is crazy considering what Mikko has meant to this organization, the fact that his jersey is most certainly going to hang in the rafters of Ball Arena when he's done playing. And the names that we got back in return have only been a part of the Colorado Avalanche for a short period of time. But I think it's ready, and I'll explain why. You can see on the screen there the parameters of the trade. Colorado sent Mikko Rantanen to the Carolina Hurricanes as part of a 3-team trade. And outside of draft compensation, the main thing they got back in return was a pair of forwards in Martin Necas and Jack Drury. Martin Necas going to be your top 6 guy, somebody who's going to slide in on that top line until Valeri Nichushkin comes back and then could potentially play as your 2C. And Jack Drury, kind of a bottom 6 guy, but I don't want to make that a dismissive in a sense that that's a pretty solid bottom 6 forward center player that you can use at your disposal. And he's proven it. He's already gotten a handful of points in his first 5, 6, 7 games here with the Avalanche. But I think that it's easy to dismiss because of Mikko Rantanen's like generational nature as a player and the insanely productive scoring that he was able to accomplish when he was here in Colorado. It's easy to dismiss that and say, well, you're never going to get that kind of production out of a lesser player in Martin Necas, but not so fast, because you can take the easy route and just look at the production of Mikko Rantanen in Carolina versus the production of Martin Necas here in Colorado, and it slants in Necas's direction. But I think it's more nuanced than that, because it's not like Mikko Rantanen alongside Sebastian Aho in Carolina hasn't had productive scoring chances. They're producing opportunities that are at least similar to the kind of production he would get if he was still here in Colorado. They're just not converting. And I think that would change the nature of the conversation. Conversely, Martin Necas, he looks like a lightning bolt out there. He's fast on the ice. He's smooth. He's converting those opportunities into points, both through goals and through assists. Remember, this is a guy who was leading the NHL in points in December, okay, ahead of Mikko Rantanen and Nathan MacKinnon and the like. But I think it's dismissive of Martin Necas's ability and what he's going to bring to the Colorado Avalanche just to say, well, he's not Mikko Rantanen. This is not a slouch. I think when you watch him, obviously his speed and his fluidity up and down the ice, it pops. But I think he has an underrated IQ as a hockey player. He's very savvy in terms of how to navigate things on the ice. You saw it against the Islanders. He has this kind of like floating ability where he can kind of hang in the defensive zone, and he doesn't try to bull rush or try to move too quickly. He waits for the puck and the opportunity to come to him and keeps himself in a position up around the blue line where he's able to jump a passing lane if needed, or like we saw against the Islanders, he's able to take a rebound, intercept a pass, and then catch New York in a bad change, which leads to a breakaway goal on the other end. So and it's not to say that Mikko Rantanen wasn't doing these things. And I think this too quickly becomes a polarizing thing where you're trying to pit Mikko against a guy like Martin Necas. But what I'm saying is the Avs were going to have to pay Mikko north of maybe even $13 and $14 million if they wanted to keep him. And it doesn't sound like they were willing to do that. And even if they were willing and able to do it, the limitations that it would continue to bring them, and from a roster construction standpoint, were the same issues that they were going to be bumping their head against like they have the last handful of years. And we've seen how the last handful of years have panned out once it got to the postseason. So if that is remaining to be true, then moving Mikko Rantanen and bringing a player like Martin Necas in, and maybe just saying, hey, we think we can get 70 to 80% of what we got from Mikko Rantanen if we put Necas alongside Nathan MacKinnon, or even in the combination of that first and second line with Valeri Nichushkin and the like in the mix. 80%, 70 to 80% of Mikko Rantanen's production for basically the same price as what you're paying Mikko now, or what you were paying Mikko, which is right around that $9 million range. That's still a bargain. 80% of $14 million is $11.2 million off the top of my head. So realistically, if you're going to be able to re-sign Martin Necas for anything less than $11.2 million, and he holds up the end of the bargain that the early returns look pretty good in terms of production, that he's going to give you somewhere north of 70% of the production for Mikko Rantanen, that's a win. And if you add in the added benefit of the rumblings that are coming out of Carolina that the Hurricanes may not be 100% sure that they're going to be able to get a long-term deal done with Mikko Rantanen at the price that he's going to command and he wants, and that his camp feels confident that he deserves. And then you factor in the Leon Draisaitl connections with Mikko's agent and things of that nature that might spur that even further. So if that happens and Carolina sends over Drury and Martin Necas, and the Avs get some draft pick compensation for a player that they weren't going to re-sign, and then it turns out that the team that sent them those players doesn't end up signing Mikko Rantanen, and he gets dealt again before the March 7th deadline, that is a massive, massive win for Avalanche general manager Chris MacFarland, which brings me to my other point, which is that Chris MacFarland, I won't necessarily go so far as to say that he deserves or should demand an apology for some of the discourse of what has transpired since the Mikko Rantanen trade. But I think it's healthy for us to take a step back and look at what Chris MacFarland's tenure as GM in terms of the marquee decisions and milestone moves that he's made since taking over right after the Cup win in 2022, and grading it on a plus-minus scale. Because if you look at it, and I just threw a handful up here, you could probably go on a more micro level and pick out other ones, but I thought I picked out a good selection here in terms of 7 or 8 big moves that he's made, starting right off the bat with the most important decision that had to be made after winning the Cup, which was choosing between Nazem Kadri and bringing him back as your 2C, or extending Valeri Nichushkin, who was younger and is explosive and has proven in hindsight since to be a massive lift to the Colorado Avalanche when he's on the ice versus when he's off. They are north of a 700 win percentage team with him on the ice, and they are basically a 500 team without him. 0.2 in terms of a win percentage of a difference from one singular player is massive, especially in a sport like hockey where you're shifting in and out 2, 3, 4 lines constantly throughout the game. So I absolutely think, and I think it would be hard to argue, despite the fact that they haven't been able to find a 2C, a true second-line center since Nazem Kadri walked out the door, choosing Valeri Nichushkin over Nazem Kadri was the right decision. And I know Nazem Kadri's absences in the last couple of postseasons and the abrupt, unexpected nature of them definitely cost the Avalanche genuine shots at defending and repeating their Stanley Cup titles. But the possibility of what he brings you on the ice is significant enough that I'm still going to give him the win on that one. After that, he had to make the decision on what to do with Gabriel Landeskog. Gabriel Landeskog has not skated meaningfully on the ice since they won the Cup. And there's a lot of us now, as we're going into year 3 and beyond of the wait and see act with Val, that are saying, you know what, it's time for Gabe Landeskog to hang it up. It's time for him. He's the captain. He's Gabe. He means so much to the organization. He, like others, will undoubtedly have his jersey hung in the rafters at Ball Arena. But paying Gabe the contract that he was signed for 3 straight years without any production on the ice and the limitations that hinders them in a hard cap sport like hockey, they need to send him the door. We can say that now, maybe 3 years in, and who knows, we may be getting to a tipping point with that where we see a retirement from Gabe if he's not able to come back from that knee cartilage replacement surgery that is so rare in professional sports, let alone in hockey. The closest parallel that we have is it's basically what Lonzo Ball went through, and we've seen not only the struggle that he made to come back to the court in the NBA, but the differences in his game pre and post that replacement surgery. So he had to deal with that. You could say, I think that's a positive. I'm not going to give Chris MacFarland a negative for handling the Gabriel Landeskog situation the way he has thus far up to this point. And again, these are sliding scales. You also look at the fact that he brought in Jonathan Drouin in free agency and then signed him to another 1-year deal. I think that's been a massive boost for the Colorado Avalanche and the chemistry that he has with Nathan MacKinnon. And I think that's been a huge solidifying piece on their top lines and what he's been able to do from a depth standpoint. A couple of other trades you could bring up, the Casey Middlestat trade. Okay, he sent Bo Byram at one point, the 4th overall pick in 2019, a guy that showed a lot of promise. And yeah, you don't really want to give up young, promising, exciting pieces. But let's not forget, with the benefit of hindsight, that we weren't always thrilled with the Bowen Byram experience here in Colorado. He was a streaky player. He had a lot of concussion issues, and he stepped away from the team for mental health reasons. And all of that is not something to be held against him. But it wasn't like we were getting the consistently great production out of Bo that would make it so that when he was traded for Casey Middlestat, that it was this big injustice. And I think early on in the Middlestat signing or the Middlestat trade after he came to Colorado, he showed flashes of being one of the better representations of a 2C replacement that we'd seen for the Colorado Avalanche. Now, you turned around and paid him $5.7 million for 3 straight years, which in hindsight has not looked good. And Casey Middlestat is somebody that may not be with the Avalanche much longer beyond this season if something doesn't happen before the deadline. But also $5.7 million, or right around that $6 million range, is that not kind of the going rate for a second-line center in the National Hockey League? I mean, I know it doesn't look good because of the production that we've gotten, but it's not like it's overpaid in the sense of production, not in the sense of market value, in my opinion, for what you're going to pay that position regardless. So I think it was a plus. I think the trading and taking a swing and trying to solve that 2C hole that the Avs have had, I think early returns were good for Middlestat and not so much. So if you want to count that as a positive on one hand and a negative in the other, and they cancel out, I'm fine with that. You also had the Ryan Johansson, Sean Walker trade. Ryan Johansson, you brought him in and you were hoping that he would return to that early career form that he had at the second line center position this time around, and it just never materialized. He never felt like he was going to get back to that point. It was really bad. He kept getting pushed down further and further in the rotation, and eventually you ship him to Philadelphia for Sean Walker. Now, Sean Walker hasn't really done anything either, so you kind of went from having nothing going south and having nothing with the hope that maybe it's ticked back up, and it hasn't. If you want to hold that one against him, I guess you can hold that one against him, but to me, it's not a massive swing and miss. Another situation that cancels out is you have on the negative end, trading for and signing Alexander Georgiev. When Georgiev came in, we thought, hey, this is a guy that just has spark and potential and just couldn't get on the ice because he's behind a guy like Igor Shesterkin. and he's not given the opportunity. And you brought him in. There was kind of some mercurial flashes, and it just was, hey, we got to let this settle in. We got to take some time. And then it went off the rails in epic, spectacular fashion. Okay. And that was after Georgiev was paid by Chris MacFarland. So, not going to argue with you there. That's a negative. However, I think that credit deserves to be given, or at least some of that negative equity should be recouped based on the willingness and the expedited nature with which a general manager corrects a mistake that was made. And I think we saw that in spades with Chris MacFarland this season by clearing out Justus Annunen and Alexander Georgiev and bringing in first Scott Wedgwood from the Nashville Predators and then Mackenzie Blackwood. And now, just like that, we went from a situation where under Annunen and Georgiev, the goaltending situation was the constant topic of conversation. And now it's really not. We feel much more confident about it. And in fact, the conversation has shifted in a lot of senses to why can't we get our goaltender some help on the defensive front or have enough offensive production to offset the good production from our goalie? So again, that's a bigger cancel out, in my opinion, than the Ryan Johansson, Sean Walker situation. Finally, arriving to the aforementioned Mikko Rantanen trade, I think that just based on the early returns, and I could be coming back to you in a month, 2 months, if they flame out in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, I could be sitting back here just like I did with James Palmer yesterday, where I had egg on my face after basically saying I don't think Jalen Hurts is a true franchise quarterback in the NFL. And then he stands out there and becomes Super Bowl MVP after throttling the Chiefs on the back of Saquon Barkley and that amazing Philadelphia Eagles defense. But in some ways, you are what your record and your trophy case says you are. Jalen Hurts is a Super Bowl champion and a Super Bowl MVP, and I can't take that away from him. So I may, after basically sitting here today on Wednesday, February 11th, and tell you that we can call it right now. It's the 12th. We can call it right now that the Mikko Rantanen trade is a winner for the Colorado Avalanche. I could be wrong. I'm here to tell you, I think that it's not. I think you are going to see Martin Necas be able to replicate the production of Mikko Rantanen to a high enough degree that the money that you're saving in combination with the production that you're getting is going to allow the Avalanche to do exactly what they set out to do with this trade, which is create some roster and cap flexibility to be able to bolster depth and not be so reliant on what was one of the best top sixes in all of the NHL. So I leave it up to you. I can see we've got some reaction and some commentary. Take what I've said, agree with it, disagree with it. You are welcome. Trey, go ahead and throw something up there. What do you got? Well said, Richie. Yep, I agree. Val was a must sign because listen, I understand that. Again, we've seen with Valeri Nichushkin's substance abuse problems, it could be easy to say, man, well, you never had to deal with any of that with Nazem Kadri. Valeri Nichushkin was significantly younger and has been able to make a marked, noticeable impact between the winning and the losing. So Mel, I agree with you. We're on the same page. It's Valeri Nichushkin 10 times out of 10 if he could go back and do that, in my opinion. McFarland deserves an apology. Well, like I said, we may get to that point, truly. And I feel like I've kind of, if those who might want to negatively label this kind of conversation could label me as a Chris MacFarland apologist. And maybe I am, but I'll tell you this. I think that as a general manager, you are not going to bat 1,000 because inherently you are the evaluator and you are the executor to bring guys in, to ship guys out, and to put the chess pieces out onto the board. But inherently, your success and your failure is determined on the actions of not you, those players that you set them up, but they have to go out there and play to the level that you are projecting that they can. There's a lot of mental game with this. And so inherently, because you are not directly responsible for the success or the failure of your decisions, it's hard to be evaluated and expect that you are going to bat 1,000 in these situations. Where I think the difference, the underlying difference is that it has to do with the expedited nature, the savviness, and the gumption that you have to be able to recognize those mistakes and correct them and make sure that they don't happen again. The Avalanche are still looking for a second line center, and they may still be looking for even longer. But it's the fact that they kept throwing darts at the board, they being Chris MacFarland in the front office. They kept throwing darts at the board, and when a dart wasn't hitting or it wasn't sticking, they moved on and they pivoted. And I think that's something that is especially easy to juxtapose when you look at how the front offices of the Colorado Avalanche and the Denver Nuggets have operated, where we've seen Calvin Booth make some of these decisions and then kind of just sit entrenched in it. And this is what we got, and this is what we're going to do. And you're starting to see some friction between Calvin Booth, the general manager, and Michael Malone, his head coach, on how to approach, because they, the Nuggets, like the Avalanche, are in a title window that is closing a little bit faster than it's opening. I appreciate you all so much for joining me today, for sitting in. I had a lot of hockey thoughts that I wanted to get off my chest, and I can't wait to see how the Four Nations Faceoff kicks off tonight. I think this is something that could set a precedent as it relates to all-star games, and you could see, depending on the success or the failure of this, you could see the NBA adopt something like this in terms of, going back to a Team USA versus the world format, which I think would be bad news for Team USA. In hockey, I think Team USA really holds a formidable chance to contend with or even win this face-off, with Canada being their primary adversary, or what should be on paper. Team USA versus the world in the National Basketball Association, I'm already starting to picture Nikola Jokic and Luka Doncic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Giannis Antetokounmpo and Joel Embiid if he decides that it's worth load managing for, and all of these other players against LeBron and Team USA, Dame Lillard and what have you. I think that as good as Kevin Durant is, and some of those players that are aging can still be, I would want no smoke from an NBA team world in that sense. So I thank you all so much for joining me. I appreciate all the comments, the feedback. Please join every day. Your voice is as welcome as mine. I would love to take the back half of these shows and share them with you, to share your comments, your thoughts, your objections. You can tell me I'm an idiot. You can tell me I'm a genius. All of the above. And after you do that, make sure you head to our YouTube channel, Denver Sports 1043 The Fan YouTube. Like, subscribe. This kind of content will be available to you 24/7 at your fingertips, anywhere, anytime. I'll see you same time, same place tomorrow.
I do what I love, and love what I do is second nature to put in the work. I only improve this crazy